Rise and Grind podcast, episode 9. Hope this finds everyone well. We're getting into the spring, and the weather is doing what the weather does this time of year, fluctuates like crazy. And it reminds me this spring transition that we go through every year. It's a lot like business. It's not just all of a sudden it's summertime and it's 28 degrees and calm outside. There's always this shift of a season where it's turbulent. It's never the same day to day. And you wake up and you're like, okay, what are we getting today? And for business ownership, I know it's very similar, except you usually never get to the actual summer. It's always just turbulent, and that's part of the game. And I think that's the beauty of it as well. I've been reflecting on the guests that we've had on the past few months, and it's quite consistent across the board that, the entrepreneurial journey is not one that's linear. And I've certainly made that mistake before, where I wanted every single year to be better than the previous, or hey, I doubled last year, I want to double again, and that's not real. And the more I lean into that, the more I research, the more other podcasts I listen to, that's definitely not the case anywhere. No matter the business, no matter the journey, it all has its ups and downs. And figured that was top of mind, worth mentioning. And the next guest that we're bringing on today, my wife actually mentioned her name a couple weeks ago in passing, and my wife Sarah said, hey, you should have Sarah Bitz on your podcast. And the more I got to thinking about it, I'm like, there is like what I would call kind of hidden rise and grinders in our community, and Sarah is one of them. She's not the one to be bragging of herself, or to go out there and talk about the business that she purchased and built in Studio Select. And then I kind of got to thinking too, like, all hairstylists, they're standing for 9 hours a day. They have to talk to people the whole time. They have to be engaged. They have to build relationships with people. Like, there's a lot of grind in that industry. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, holy shit, like, she's going to be perfect for this. And I'm very grateful that she was more than willing to give up her time today to come visit with me. I was able to pick her brain. We get into everything from her starting point in cause class in high school, all the way to purchasing Studio Select and onward, and where she's at today, where she owns her business. And she even said, she feels part-time retired at the age of 30, which I think is absolutely incredible. And one thing that I love about Sarah Bitz is that she identifies early on, and this is a really good trait that I see in her, being still young, in my opinion. She identifies that work isn't everything. She takes a lot of time off. She plans her vacations or her trips well in advance, and she has put in the hours to build a client base that she relates to and that she trusts, and her clients trust her, and they keep going back to her over and over and over. And I think that's what has made Sarah such a successful business owner as well, is putting that trust in the staff and having that reciprocal culture that gets built within a business. So I think it's really cool. Sarah has the business of Studio Select, owning the hair studio, and then she also has her own business still, which is doing clients' hair and styling and coloring. So I hope you learned something from this episode. I know I certainly did. And as always, hope you enjoy Rise and Grind. All right, we got Sarah Bitz, the owner of Studio Select, here in the Rise and Grind podcast studio. Sarah, thank you so much for your time. You're just sharing with me. It's like one of your only days off. So how are things going? Bring me up to speed in your world of the hairdresser. How have things been this year?
Actually really good. I feel like it's years just go by very, very quickly now. And I used to hear people say that all the time, and they were like, the days go slow and the years go fast. And I never really understood, but I'm kind of starting to understand that now. Business has been really good. Probably, yeah, like 3 years ago, in June, we moved over to the new space that we're in now. The old salon was great. It just circumstances led to like a really kind of happy opening. My dad owns a building that we're currently in, and there used to be a pub in there. I'm pretty sure everybody has been to multiple pubs that were on that corner, and just obviously super unfortunate. But with COVID, a lot of businesses kind of took a hit from that. So he was kind of thinking about getting another restaurant in there and was hemming, hawing back and forth. And I basically just said, no, we're going to renovate it and I'm going to move in there and I'll
Nice.
pay rent to you instead and kind of keep money in our family, which ended up being a really, really good move. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
because that you're in where was it the industry pub used to be?
yeah,
Is that what it
yeah,
was? Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, there was a lot of restaurants in and out of there. Now
yeah.
we might as well jump right into that transition then. Were you at a point where you needed more space, or it was just circumstantial? This space came up, your dad had the building, and it just fit, or like was that something always on your mind when you were in the previous building?
I don't really, I kind of, it's kind of a little of a double-edged sword. I definitely realized that we were going to need more space, and I think that maybe the effort and obviously financial investment of investing into somebody else's building, same thing obviously with my dad, but it just feels a little bit more comfortable when you're doing something that big with a family member as opposed to just a really just stranger more or less. Albert was a wonderful person to rent from, obviously a great space, but it was time to expand and I felt like quite limited with the way that the space was originally. And now Who's Your Caddy's in there and they obviously gutted it, made a really good job of it from what I've heard. So it just kind of worked out, I guess, timing wise. And I think that COVID, unfortunately, as well, put a little bit of a push towards that. I bought the business in 2018 and then obviously 2019 hit and it was an absolute nightmare. I basically feel like I blacked out 3 years of my life. Like I don't really remember because it was we were working and
It's
then you
crazy,
weren't
right?
and it was
Oh,
awful. So I think that once that kind of settled, um and I felt like quite a shift and a transition in a lot of my staff in the sense that um I think that people felt very out of control, like of their lives during COVID. And so, especially with people in our industry, when we weren't able to work, coming back, people kind of wanted to take more hold. I also kind of felt that little bit of a shift as well. So, with opening the new salon, I knew going into it that I would need space to allow people to do more of a rental as opposed to like commission style payment. And yeah, the old salon just didn't have enough space. So, this
fair.
was kind of fell into my lap and worked out better.
It's funny how like those COVID years, it's to me anyways, it seems like it was decades ago. Like we kind of forget about it until we
Yeah,
remember like holy smokes, that wasn't that long ago, right?
no.
It's wild. I totally agree with you there. So I guess I was wanting to start at kind of the origin story when you got kind of involved in hairdressing, but since we're on the topic, maybe we'll start here at where when you bought Studio Select. How does one go about? And obviously, we don't have to talk about numbers or anything, but when you look at a business like Studio Select, how do you value it? Is it just based off of their revenue? Is it based off of the what is currently profitable there? Like how did you go about or identify being like, hey, I want to buy this instead of starting my own thing?
Yeah. So, I started probably well, I started working at the salon. I'm pretty sure I was in grade, so 2012 it would have been. And I worked there for a few years, and obviously they developed a very, very like close and sentimental partnership. Me and Sandy make a funny comment about how we're each other's like funniest friendships that we have because she's kind of like a mom, but she's a coworker and she's a friend, and just this weird bond that we have. And we obviously like once in a while she would make a comment or kind of drop little hints about eventually, maybe this is something that you would like to buy into. And I always kind of thought it was, a fun idea, but it never really felt as serious as probably, maybe what I knew it was going to be. And so she, at one point, a couple years into me working there, kind of sat me down and was like, Sarah, I'm ready. I think this is a really good opportunity for you. We should sit down and have a discussion about it. And so from there, it just kind of went forward. but at the time I was still living at home and definitely itching to not be living with my parents anymore. So I basically said, you got to give me a little bit more time. I'm interested, obviously. It's not personal, it's just business for you in the sense that if you want to get out and you don't want to wait for me, I understand. But everything kind of worked out timing wise, bought a house, and then a little bit later kind of started to get in towards going to the bank, figuring out finances. I think working at a business and watching essentially the profitability was probably a great help. I think that if somebody came in and didn't really understand our industry and saw, numbers and the years of books, it maybe wouldn't make as much sense. But I think also knowing the potential of what could be. I have pretty like entrepreneurial parents, so that was also extremely helpful knowing that just because you see numbers, it doesn't always mean that that's kind of just the end game of it. Um,
Gotcha.
and so then, yeah, I went to the bank and basically asked them for a loan and told them kind of what it was. I had a really good relationship also with the person who worked on me, worked on the loan with me. So I think that was helpful as well. Um, yeah,
Gotcha. So, couple questions there because, my this was a couple weeks ago, but my wife mentioned to me, she was like, "Oh, you gotta have Sarah Bitz on," and then the more I thought about it, I'm like, "Holy shit!" Like being a hairdresser and then owning a salon, that is a huge business because your revenue from a business owner kind of comes through the hairdressers. Like for me, I just go get my hair cut, I pay, and then don't think
yeah.
anything of it. But I know there's a lot more to it there. So when you're looking at it from like a business owner perspective, you had mentioned earlier about commissions. There's probably other ways, whether it's an hourly wage you can pay people, or maybe people rent chairs. Could you bring the not only myself but the listeners kind of up to speed from a business owner perspective? How do you generate revenue other than someone just coming and working with you directly as a customer?
It's a great question. I think it really blows down to the end of the day the motivation of your staff. If you are a commission based salon, and that also does fall on you as an owner, if you're not motivating people or helping them to grow, they're kind of like, what am I doing here for you? Like, it's kind of a 50-50 in that sense that and also choosing the right staff. So I had a couple people of leave when I bought probably pretty quickly within, and I think that it was just maybe like a harder transition for them. No hard feelings. It was kind of like refreshing for me as well. And then new people came in and started, and I had a couple people kind of cycle in and out. And again, like nobody knows what the hell they're doing when they first buy a business. And everybody told me that, and I was kind of like, "Oh, I have a general idea," but I literally had no idea what the fuck I was doing. And they're like, "Give it 3 years," and I'm like, in my head, 3 years is a really long time to try and figure something out when you have people's like livelihood in your hands. But having a really established clientele, which that salon does, it's been around for years, was really, really helpful. Um, I guess generating revenue would be, yeah, bringing in more people who have a clientele. That would probably be your biggest attribute, I guess, for trying to generate more revenue. At one point, I actually had like some business coaches from one of our main reps that we do a lot of ordering through. They have a really, really solid kind of business program. And I took it when I first bought the business. And I made a comment about, basically how I wanted to get rid of retail because it just
Mm,
sometimes annoyed me that I had to like take time out of my day or add on extra things. And the one woman was like, basically told me I was out of my mind and never really thought about it. But that creates a lot of revenue too, as opposed to somebody, ordering off Sephora or going to Chatters. So if you
sure.
have, something that you can give to people that isn't always just a service, I think that's a really big thing too. Um,
Gotcha.
yeah.
So the product then isn't so much for, making profit, it's more just a value add to the your current clients. Is that kind of the
Yeah.
concept there? Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
100%.
And yeah, like I think I don't know if you felt this, but like you think starting a business is going to be all sunshine and rainbows until you get into it, and then there's like you basically learn as you go, right? Like you have this
Yeah.
idea of what's on the other side of the fence, and you get on the other side of the fence, and you're like, holy shit, right?
Yeah.
Well, walk me back, Sarah. I want kind of the origin story. Like, when did you first get into hairdressing? Like, was it a hobby at one point? Can you walk me through kind of the early stages? And then when did you kind of figure out, like, hey, this is actually going to be a career for me?
Yeah, I'd probably say like from quite a young age, I always really liked doing like hair and makeup with my girlfriends, getting ready for a high school dance, anything like that. And then probably in grade 10 and 11, when I started taking cause at McCoy, that's really when it kind of started to become very interesting. I took cause so much in high school that they basically ran out of programs to give me. Um, and thank God I had wonderful teachers. And it was my grad year, and I had earned enough credits through work experience from working at not Studio Select, but another salon. Um, After school on the weekends, and obviously high school and schooling in general wasn't really my forte, so trades probably fell into my lap a little bit easier. And so all the way through, yeah, my last kind of 3 years of high school, just hammering out lots of cause and working at a salon. um, and then I started my apprenticeship probably at, yeah, like 17, I think. It was really really early, but kind of got my foot in the door at that point. And the salon that I was working at was basically surrounded by like old folks homes, so it was definitely like a lot of grunt work and like shampooing, like the old lady kind of granny sets. But it definitely taught me a lot of skills, and I'm very very thankful for it. And then it proved that it isn't always glamorous in the very beginning, and sometimes you have to work through stuff that isn't as comfortable and nice to do. But after I graduated, I got a call from Sandy, and she basically said, I heard you are an apprentice and I need a new apprentice, so I think you should come down for an interview. And then, yeah, 2012 started working there, and from there just kind of worked all the way through it. I did a fast track program in Calgary for apprenticeships, and probably the first 3 days in, I was kind of like, what the hell am I doing here? Because it was basically like retaking cause from the very beginning. And so that was like a little bit of a shock to me, and I kind of felt like a little bit of a setback. And then it ended up, you do your first 10 weeks, go back to work for a little bit, and come back for your second set. And I basically said to myself, like, I think I'm just going to study really hard and practice the things that I need to do for, I guess, like the hands on practical version of the exam. And I was like, I'm not going back to school. I'm just going to challenge them. And I did, and it worked out okay for me. And again, like, thankful that I did that, because it put a little bit of pressure on you. And I think that it's good to be in uncomfortable situations sometimes.
Gotcha. So then, and I did not know this. So there's like, it sounds like an educational program, or at least some type of flow of your career going from apprenticeship, and then you have to get qualified. Is there like a designation that you were trying to reach, or can you walk me through that?
Yeah, so basically it's the same as, I think that they kind of vary depending on hours and obviously certain years of certain trades. But hairstyling is like a red seal trade. So you do your apprenticeship and earn your hours, and it's two sets of 1400, I think. I kind of forget because it's been so long.
Wow, that's a
But
lot.
yeah, it definitely is. And you think that you're getting so far ahead, and then you count up all your hours, and you're like, oh my God, like, how is this ever going to end? But while you're doing that, it's kind of like, it kind of forces you to just sit in practicing a lot, because you have to earn that time. So, um, yeah, once you get your two sets of 1400, then you write your exams. There's two sets of exams, obviously. And then after that, you get your red seal and you write that final exam, and then you're done.
That's cool. I did not know any of that. So that's, and I'm sure a lot of listeners don't, right? They, like
No,
I
I
said,
don't think
they,
a lot of people do. Like, I think that it seems like such a glamorous, like, girly kind of fun career. And
yeah,
obviously, I don't wouldn't sit and be like, oh, I compare myself to a plumber or an electrician or anybody who does those trades. But I'm like, we're up there too.
yeah. Well, that's a perfect segue too, Sarah, because I want to talk about those earlier years, whether it was through your apprenticeship or maybe shortly after, but building up your client base. Like, I think your clientele probably looks a lot different now than what it did in the first few years. And like you said, it wasn't always glamorous. Can you maybe give some examples, or kind of paint the picture of like those days when you probably look at your schedule and you're like, oh my gosh, like I have to go to work and do this. Like, what what got you through those first few years? Because I know there had to be some grind there and some friction.
Yeah. So when you're first starting out, obviously your friends come and see you and your family, and that's wonderful. But when you work an 8 hour day and you only have one person, obviously at that point, again, having a really, really good boss, and a mentor makes a big difference. You're not on commission until you are obviously your numbers on commission are more than what you're getting paid hourly. So you're not ever really struggling that hard financially, because I hope that everybody has that good of a
Gotcha.
mentor, and boss that wouldn't, put you out there and just hope for the best, and having a second job to try and make it through. Um, it's also really good, I think, because it makes you, once you've done all the little things that you can do to try and fill your time and not waste somebody's money is invested on you, paying you, you watch people and you learn a lot from watching. And I would basically just go over and, hand foils to the stylist, and they'd be doing something or they'd be cutting, and, well, why are you doing that? And, I'd see something and I would be like, oh my God, holy crap, what are you doing? How's that going to end up being good on somebody's hair? And deer in a headlights, and then you'd see it at the end, you'd be like, okay, like that makes sense. And then you would have a client, 4 days later, and you would try that thing that you saw and hope for the best. And people were really, really patient, obviously, and nothing ever really too bad happened. I guess my biggest f up would have actually have probably been on my mom. Thank God. And she's obviously gentle and was really, really kind with me about it and wore it really, really well. But
That's awesome.
um
She'll
and
still
then
love
you
you, I'm
do
sure.
somebody's hair, and they have a friend and they recommend them. And I think a really, really big part of it is actually your, I think personality obviously plays a really big role in it, in a sense that you could be amazing at doing hair, but if you can't communicate with people and they can't confide in you or feel comfortable, or feel good about themselves, personally, regardless of their appearance after they're done, it's not really that great of a vibe. And you got to spend time with these people. Like when you're doing a major color or anything like that, somebody might be sitting in your chair for 3 hours, and if you can't conversate or interact with that person on a personal level, it doesn't really end up going so well.
That's awesome. So I want to press on that point a little bit, because that is a huge skill set that you would obviously have to have in order to, like, if I have someone sitting down with me for 3 hours, after 20 minutes I'm like, I'm out of stuff to talk about. Like,
Yeah.
it, how did you, like, build, because that is a skill, no question. Like, yeah, there's some natural communication gifts that you may have, but were you aware of that early on? Like, did you do anything to be like, okay, this is my process when I'm meeting someone new? Or, like, do you have things that are kind of front of mind that you talk to people about?
Yeah, definitely. I think obviously too, over time, conversations ebb and flow just with the seasons even. So, first time that you're doing somebody, you ask questions that are maybe a little bit more tiptoe and not as personal, because you don't know what this person wants to share or how they are. But you find kind of something that they respond to really well. And then I usually try to kind of play on that, in a sense that some people really like talking about their dog, or some people really like talking about their kids, or, there's all those universal things. And then after a while, you realize, oh, I've seen this person 3 times. We've talked about all the things. And sometimes I would actually go on Pinterest and I would find like funny questions of just like things. And I realized that was such a big, conversation carrier. And people would like, I'd end up looking down and be like, I gotta go. Like, I'm 15 minutes behind for my next appointment, because you're just enjoying this conversation with people. And some of those things were like, if you had, unlimited funds and you could do anything right now, travel wise, where would you go? And people would look at me in the mirror stunned, and they're like, oh my God, that's such a good question. And you would just like verbalize that for like 20 minutes, and they'd throw things in, and other people would chime in funny things that they would say. And so that connection of like having a really good conversation with somebody, it just makes your day like amazing.
I think too, that's probably a part of the whole experience and the whole value proposition of why people come back too. Because, like, whether it's hairstylist, or I think of, like, if I go to my massage therapist, like,
Yeah.
if it's a clunky conversation or it's awkward, I'm like, I'm not going back, right?
I don't
So
want to have to do that again.
yeah, exactly, exactly. Well, that I appreciate you sharing that because that blows me away. And like talking about like grinding through your day, sometimes like you're on your feet 8 9 hours a day, talking with people, interacting with people. Can you talk to about kind of the physical requirements? Because like people don't realize like having to be on your feet, and I'd imagine your shoulders and your arms are in the air a lot of the day. Like how do you do that? Because like if I stand at my desk for like an hour and a half, I'm like, oh my gosh, my back hurts. Like
Yeah.
how did is there anything you do to kind of combat that, or walk me through the physical aspect of your job?
Well, I'm going to start off by saying when I started getting busier, I stopped wearing heels very, very quickly to work.
No kidding.
That obviously you're like aesthetically, you want your outfit to look pleasing. And then I would be like, I don't want to wear runners with this outfit. So I would wear heels. And then, I'd always bring a spare set of sandals or shoes. But absolutely, like after a while, you just start to realize vanity is out the window. Wear a pair of runners and no people respect more you taking care of yourself than they do being like, oh, your outfit is perfect. Um, all the girls have, and most hairstylists actually have those anti fatigue mats, and people don't realize it. I think that people think that it's just kind of part of the station, but they actually are like a really thick foam, and they're meant to help kind of
Gotcha.
give, your feet a little bit of a break. I wasn't generally probably that active of a person. And within the last couple of years, and I think obviously doing a lot of the grunt work for the reno kind of took a toll on my body. I've kind of always had a bad back just from gymnastics and just, not doing things properly and sleeping terribly. I think a lot of those things compound over time. And then, like you said, you stand all day for 8 hours. Well, you're walking in the door and you're like hunched over and don't even want to, like, you don't even want to stand anymore. Like, no matter what you're doing and what shoes you're wearing, you're like, I literally can't be on my
Yeah.
feet any longer. So anti-fatigue mats, good shoes, and then even just being conscious of your posture. I started to
Mm,
realize, like again, watching people, and it happens over time. You kind of start to lose those skills that you learned from the beginning because you get faster and busier and you have more people. But, even just like bending over when you shouldn't be, like, or bending over to cut the bottom of somebody's hair when you should be jacking their chair all the way up. It's just
mm,
little kind of things that you need to be conscious of. And it's funny how when you watch somebody do something that they shouldn't be doing, how you're like, oh my God, I did that, today. And so for the rest of the day, you're more conscious of it.
sure.
Um, but definitely starting to, go to the gym and working out significantly improved, like going for regular massages in Cairo. I think all that compounded makes a really, really big difference.
Mm,
But I don't think that anybody going into this industry should think that they're not ever going to have any type of ailment. It's just kind of a reality. And I think that goes for any trade. Like,
sure. Yeah.
well, you're, like physically, it's demanding on your body. So just do the things that you can to try and take care of yourself and take time off too. Like,
Mm.
learn to say no. That was hard after a little while to try and reintegrate into my brain, like saying no to certain things.
Sure, sure. That's literally. I'm just writing down a few notes here. That was going to be my next question for you. Kind of from, obviously the more work or the more clients you take on, the more money you make. Like there's a very direct correlation.
Yeah.
How do you handle building in time off? Because like, admittedly, I struggle with that too. I'm like, well, if we go on a vacation, I know like when I stop, my business kind of stops too. Like there's things that you can keep going a little bit, but how did you have to learn as you go with that? Or I guess talk to me about, giving yourself permission to take time off.
Yeah, I think that when you start to get busy and you see your book filling, it almost becomes like a little bit of an addiction where you're like, and if you are a financially driven person, that definitely has an effect on it because you're like, you see kind of what you have in the coming weeks and you're like, calculating, and it's really kind of exciting because the kind of financial gain that you're going to be making. But after a while, I think you realize, oh, if you take time off, like people are going to understand. And I think also building the proper clientele puts a big thing on that too. You want people to be excited for you when you just say, yeah, we're going to take a long weekend and go to Fernie, or we're going to go to Mexico for a week. Sometimes people would kind of, past clients would make comments, and I was kind of off put by it. And come to think of it, I think maybe it's just maybe they didn't have somebody encouraging them to also take time off. So maybe they had kind of a negative mentality towards it. And I empathize with that, obviously. But I found too more in our generation, and I actually read something one time. Um, and it was basically a guy that was interviewing a few years ago, obviously, now that I read it. So it would have been a younger age, but it basically blew down to being people of a younger generation don't want benefits. They don't want this. They don't want that. They just want to be able to take time off so they can go to Coachella for 4 days and not have to feel guilty about it. And I kind of giggled when I saw it. And then it made me really realize like people really value time outside of their job. You spend, 80% of your life probably. I don't even know if that's accurate. And even when you leave your job, you don't really leave it because you'll be on vacation, you leave your phone on, and you can attest to this probably. People text you or they're inquiring. Do you
Yeah.
ever actually ever really leave your job? Especially if you are within, the service industry. So I I think that I always kind of knew to take time off and have weekends and just try and factor in things that you can. But I really, really encourage it, like to everybody, that if you have the opportunity to go do something and take a vacation, you can always make more money, but you cannot make more time.
So true, so true, and you're right. If a client has an issue with that, then really are they even worth staying keeping with? It's kind of like a filtration of your own
Yep.
people that you want around you, right?
Yep.
So that's cool. Now, how do you conduct kind of your weeks or your days from like business owner Sarah and like still dealing with your clients directly? How do you set that up? Do you have a framework or is it just kind of you wing it?
Yeah, I will probably say, knowing what I know now, looking back, um, and I've said this before, nobody can really prepare you for all of the things that you don't really realize that are going to kind of come in with owning a business. And some people's brains, I think, are better at handling and doing that kind of business side. If I'm being 100% transparent, I actually really don't enjoy the business admin side of things. I'm more or less like, I just want to do hair, make sure that my staff is good, the building is not on fire, and I want to go home. I was actually talking to another business owner a couple weeks ago, and she kind of we got onto the topic of business and numbers, and she had taken over a business from somebody who had ran it for years before her and has a close relationship with that person. And she kind of talked about where my sales were last year and kind of going back and forth on that. And I said the same thing to her, like, I envy and kind of admire people who have a little bit more motivation for that. um so I guess to kind of answer the question, now my schedule, I'm fortunate in a sense that I only work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, so I have Friday through Monday to do a lot of stuff. If I know that there is like admin or kind of the business aspect of things that needs to get done, I'll go in like early on a Friday morning, or I'll hammer some stuff out on Monday when the salon's like quite not busy because not a lot of people are there. And that kind of helps me get a lot of stuff done. But also sometimes I don't like doing that. So I'm like, oh, if I put this color on, I have half an hour while it's processing. So I can do this, this, and this. And I kind of try and just hammer it all out during the days that I'm actually there so that I can really enjoy having that Friday through Monday off. And I think it is about just trying to learn a balance of what actually works for you. Some people are really good at doing um, business all the time, but the change to the new salon definitely made things easier in a sense that now that everybody is on rental, everybody's kind of self-sufficient. Like I don't really have to do, a whole lot employees wise, and that took a really big kind of load off of me. And it also made people really, really happy because now everybody's kind of just working for themselves, and made things definitely easier for
Mm,
somebody who isn't a super numbers person, I would say.
gotcha, gotcha. So when you say rental, correct me if I'm wrong. So that means someone is just paying you a monthly rate to occupy your space and to conduct essentially their own business within Studio Select. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
And then so if they have zero clients, you really don't care, and they could have a million clients and you really don't care, right? You just want
Yeah,
to provide the space for them.
yeah,
Gotcha. I
exactly.
I could see how that's probably more in line with having a positive culture in your business as opposed to being maybe like commission based or something like that, where it's like holy shit, like maybe hairdressers want to get more business from walk-ins or whatever the case is. It could be more competitive that way.
Yeah.
Do you see hair salons? Is there are the majority of them rental styles like yours, or does it just kind of depend on the owner?
I think it really does definitely depend on the owner. I see 100% the, I guess, value in both because I've done both. Um, I feel like it's definitely, yeah, I think it just kind of depends on who the owner of the business is. Um, there's definite, obviously, benefits to both, but I guess you just kind of have to decide what
Hmm.
actually ends up working for you as an owner, more or less. Um, I would probably say in Medicine Hat, there's a fair share of commission and rental. And I think a lot of people also, you might have a couple people on rental, but then you might have a couple people on commission. So I think it really
Gotcha.
just kind of depends on what works for you.
Gotcha. I'd imagine the rental setup is a lot more consistent from your side of things, right? Because you kind of know how many chairs are being filled, and it's more consistent in terms of revenue for you. So that makes sense to me for sure. Um, Now, being where you're at now, Sarah, like looking back 10 years, did you ever imagine you would have bought a business and sustain a business and move locations? Was that always something in your mind, or do you look back now and you're like, holy smokes, I can't believe where I'm at?
I definitely do think that like quite often. I feel like I felt like that from the very beginning. I'm always kind of like a little bit wowed at the situation. And obviously that comes from, I don't ever say luck, but a little bit of hard work and just
Mhm.
being fortunate to be surrounded by really, really good people. Um, I think that makes a really, really big difference in your life on obviously multiple levels. Um, I think when I bought the salon, that was like a really big shock for me in the sense that I think I always wanted to do it, but until it became, like an actual thing that I had, I didn't really, really realize that. Um, yeah, I think that I always in my head knew that I wanted to at some point own a salon. I didn't really know how I was going to get there,
Mhm.
but the process of how I went through it obviously worked out very well for me, and I'm super fortunate for that. I didn't think that I'd probably end up doing something, renovating a bay with my dad. Like that was probably like the highlight of everything.
Sure.
So I feel lucky about that, and it makes you really appreciate stuff a little bit more when you're like down in the dirt and kind of doing it on your own. So
Hmm. Hmm.
yeah.
Well, you should be proud, Sarah, and I can tell. Even I know we're similar age, and our friend groups kind of intermingle. I've never heard anyone say a bad thing about you, so
Oh, thank you.
you should be proud of the business you built. And it's one thing to like build a business, but it's another thing to buy a business and keep. I mean, you had mentioned there was a little bit of turnover, but to keep that brand really strong and for it to be a positive light in the community. So just wanted to acknowledge you for that.
Thank
What's
you.
next for you? Is this just you're happy where you're at, and things are just going to be smooth sailing from here on out, or walk me through kind of the next few years for you, if any?
Um, I mean, I think at this point, yeah, things are going really, really good. So I don't really feel like a crazy need to be doing any shifting. I mean, obviously growth is obviously welcomed. I have one more chair that I could rent out, but at this point, I'm not super crazy about like advertising. And every once in a while, my dad's kind of on my ass and he's like, "Why isn't that chair rented? What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Don't worry about what I'm doing. Everything is fine." And that kind of puts a little bit of fire under my butt. But our staff right now is so amazing that I'm like, I would be very, very picky at this point to bring anybody in because
Hmm.
we have such a good dynamic and the girls are wonderful. I just, at this point, everything is going really, really well. So obviously, I welcome any type of growth or something new. But basically, I worked and I did all the things that I did just to get to this point in my life to be, I make a funny joke, but like semi-retired at 30, and just
That's amazing.
I feel really
Yeah.
fortunate that I get to have the time that I do, and when I'm there, it's wonderful. I love my job. I don't ever want to stop doing hair. And people have asked me that before as well, in the sense of like, why don't you just stop doing hair and just own the business? But I'm like, no, that's into like my core of what I like doing, and the conversations and just the relationships that you have with people. It's just, there's too much sentiment and I think pride to kind of maybe not get out of physically doing hair. And until my hands are crumbled and not well, I basically just kind of keep going.
Right. That's right. Well, that's pretty cool, and I think it's a testament to building a business around your passion, right? Because I think at least from being a fly on the wall in other businesses, that's when people get crossed up is when they try to make money on something that's not really their primary interest or their passion, right? And I can tell
Yeah.
just by the way you're talking, like you legitimately love still doing hair, and I think that's super important to keep, right? You want to stay in touch with those people because much like anything, you're in a human relationship business more than anything else, right?
Yeah, 100%. I think that was a definitely like interesting thing to learn too over time, that at the end of the day, you could not be super good at what you do, but if you have that relationship with people, it makes a really, really big difference.
Love that. Well, we're getting already to 40 minutes here, so I don't want to keep you too long, Sarah. Any closing thoughts on your end?
No, I think that's about it. I feel like I just went through a journey of the last 10 years of my life.
That's perfect. I think it's important for people to hear that, and I think it's important for people to like know, like, hey, it wasn't easy all the time, right? Like,
No.
and that starting out that apprenticeship in those first few years, that it couldn't have been easy for you. So, good on you for hanging in there, and look forward to continuing to see you crush it. So, thanks for your time, Sarah. Appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay,
Bye,
see ya.
Ryan.